Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. I'm excited to be joined today by, we're going to kind of hit another area of Kentucky we hadn't really dived into too much lately yet. And so I'm excited to have Hank Ballinger on the podcast today from Richmond, Kentucky, or that's where he now resides, but originally from more eastern Kentucky, near some of the parts I used to grow up when I was a small child and so forth. So Hank, appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very nice. I appreciate being able to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Absolutely. We got connected through obviously some similar guests, guests that have been on the podcast and similar friends. And obviously, I was not aware of your name in Richmond, but I think obviously a lot of people in Richmond are aware of who you are in that sense. And we have not really taken a deep dive really into Richmond. So we'll kind of do that as well as just kind of hear your story as you've got some unique circumstances and some of the creative financing things you've been a part of. And I think they're very relevant to today's conversation as far as that's become more and more of a, even for my personal self. And I don't know if I've really gone into my story with that recently, so I might actually kind of tell that one a little bit too. But before we do so, as we always do, hop back in the DeLorean and tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into real estate investing to begin with.
Well, that's a very interesting story. I grew up in Appalachia, Kentucky, in a very small area called Jackson County. Population of Jackson County, maybe 15,000, maybe 20,000 for the whole county.
Yeah,
at the most. But the county seat, McKee, 550 people. So very rural area. We have one stoplight in the whole county. In the whole county. Now, I graduated from high school in 1982.
Yeah.
So in the last 41 years, McKee has boomed. There is now almost 1,000 people in McKee.
Yeah.
Very rural area.
So I grew up in Stanton, and of course, there probably wasn't much more than 4 to 5 stoplights in the whole county, talking about the other cities too. But yeah. Oh yeah.
Being from Eastern Kentucky, you understand the mindset of people. When I grew up, and I'm sure you can relate to this, everybody was, you pay everything off. You get your house paid off. You get your car paid off.
Yeah.
If you have a farm, get the farm paid off, the tractor, the implements, the cows, you pay everything off. And you then can start building wealth. But that is just the exact mindset of what you really need to do to build wealth.
Yeah, and they don't teach you that in school. We've had that conversation a lot. They don't teach you that in school. They don't teach you that in many places, but it's out there. And especially in today's modern day of information. If I had YouTube, or if you had YouTube growing up, like just the amount of things my wife swears I watch YouTube and probably right more than anything else because I'm always just looking up stuff. Or I need to educate myself on this and learn about this. And in a society where we're constantly go, a lot of times it's easier to at least I can put on an audio book or put on a video and start learning while I'm doing something and kind of be more productive with my time.
Yeah. I will listen to probably an hour or two of YouTube.
Yeah.
Motivational speeches, Bigger Pockets,
Yeah.
George Gammon, Jeff Snyder, Jason Hartman, Hugh Hendry, some of these macroeconomics guys, or geopolitical guys. And it's I want to constantly, the more I get of it, I want to know more on how to build wealth, what's happening in the world, because it affects me and my business. So it's kind of like you can't get enough at some point. So I'm listening to this as I'm getting ready in the morning, while I'm in the shower, while I'm driving down the road. And my wife is like, "Oh, do you ever quit?" The answer's no. 6 to 8 hours every day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So being from Kentucky, did you go college education, any of these things? Kind of take me through then, how'd you get from A to B as far as into real estate investing, what were you doing prior?
I grew up, again, in Jackson County, very rural. When I got out of high school, I wasn't going to go to college. I didn't do well in school. Yeah. I copied a ton. My wife that I have now, I copied off her in high school. She'll tell you the same story. So I didn't do well in school. I wasn't going to go to college. Probably wasn't a great candidate for college. Didn't go. So I got a factory job. And I worked in factories for probably 25 years. Nothing wrong with factory work. Okay. I loved it. A lot of great people in the factory, just good, hardworking people.
And the trades have honestly become something that's irreplaceable and grown in value, but continue there.
Yeah. But the fact of it is, I was never going to get ahead in the factory. I was constantly, till I get 67 and a half, I could draw full Social Security. I was going to be in that factory.
Yeah.
So one day I just started thinking, I've got to do something different. So I asked them for some time off, and they said, sure, yeah, take a half a day. So I took a half a day off, said it wasn't very busy. So I drove around Richmond. Every business I came to, that person made it, that person made it, that person made it. So after doing that for a few hours, a few thousand times, I had to think, well, I didn't do well in school, didn't go to college, but there is no way that 100% of these people are smarter than me. Most of them probably, but not 100%. So I thought, I've got to start thinking differently. That, Landry, that made all the difference in the world. And I started thinking, okay, if these people can make it, I can too, but I've got to start thinking like the wealthy. And there are 3 mindsets. There's the poor mindset. If you think and do what the poor do, you're going to be poor. If you think and do what the middle class do, you will be middle class. And if you think and do what the wealthy do, you will be wealthy. Now, in America, nothing can stop that. Now, why is that? Because, and growing up in a middle class mindset, oh, the government's against you. The man is against you. The man is not against you. The man wants you to succeed, because the more you succeed, the more taxes you're going to pay.
That's a good point.
So the government wants you to get ahead. They just want you to do it and give them their big piece of the pie.
The biggest, I think, point to that about wanting you to get ahead is, some of the tax laws with write-offs, and we've talked about that in the show, and moving capital from one investment property to another without paying the tax, deferring those taxes. Yeah, I mean, for sure, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, but 1031 tax deferred exchanges, one of the most awesome rules ever.
Yeah.
Like you said a while ago, as we were talking before the show, they don't teach you this in school. Nobody goes over
I think
that.
what it was for me was when I started realizing you're in essence with real estate triple dipping. And what I mean by that is, 1, you're getting the appreciation of the property. 2, you're taking depreciation of the property towards the income you're making. And then 3, hopefully you're making actual cash flow off the property at the same time as well. And you're like, that's a win-win and a win.
Yeah.
And so it feels like you're doing something wrong, but it's like, that's the way it's incentivized.
It does. When I worked in factories all those years and I didn't have all these perks and I didn't get incentives to keep building wealth, it was like they just keep grinding on you. Yeah. More taxes, do more work. Instead of working 60 hours a week, work 70. And you just keep on, and it's kind of like, I can't get ahead. Well, you can. It's designed that way. Yeah. But if you're incentivized, and you are through the government, you're incentivized to buy income-producing property and keep building with 1031s. And you're right, the phantom income, the appreciation, the depreciation, and the equity you build in that, and then the cash flow. It's like, man, you get so many incentives. And I tell people this all the time: the bigger you get, the more tax structure you have. Meaning, at the end of the year, if you've made a lot of money, there are things you can do to offset. If you start around October, you can offset that capital gains to where you can invest in your own property and offset that capital gains. And so the IRS has literally set it up to where you can build more wealth just by having real estate. It gives you more tax structure.
Yeah.
The average person don't have that. So they encourage you to get ahead by giving you more tax structure. It's amazing, really, what you can do.
And again, back to your point, I mean, it's just a matter of mindset of like choosing like how, and that's what kind of similar ways to me. I was like, okay, what are those people doing to get to that point? And that's, I mean, for me, in my business, I just saw it because a lot of my clients had real estate to begin with and so forth. And I was just like, I had buddies kind of egg me on saying, you should get into this or look into it. And I'm like, but I don't know how. Like, I don't have a ton of money. I guess backing up a little bit, I was like, I don't have a ton of money to put into this. How could I get into it? And I think the reality is, as I'm sure you can attest here in a second, like you don't have to have a lot of money to start off with and somehow get into it. There's a million ways to structure deals and get into something one way or another.
Oh, yeah. The third property I ever bought, I guess it's the fourth. One property I had worked on for a year, I was turned down by 8 banks in Madison County.
Okay.
My DTI, they kept saying your DTI, your debt to income, is out of whack.
You're still working full time at this time?
I was still working full time. Mm-hmm. I was still working in the factories. Again, nothing wrong with factories, but I was never going to get ahead. No way. So I'm working in the factories. So I'm trying to buy more property. And I probably had, maybe 28, 30 units at the time. And so I'm trying to get this one property. I tried for over a year to get that property. I went through 8 banks in Madison County. They turned me down. Mm. I went to a guy who farmed out loans. It's called Rock Solid Mortgage at the time. Great guy named Jeremy. Won't give his last name, but he helped us out. He got a bank in California to do the loan. Now, I didn't really understand at the time the great financial crisis, GFC, and what was happening with the housing market. And some of these banks were giving ninja loans, crazy loans. So he got a bank in California to do this. Now, a year later, they sold that.
Yeah.
One as a mortgage-backed security on the stock and the derivatives market. But he got a bank to do that. We got this loan. We should never have gotten that loan. I had to take on 2 partners. Took me over a year. I was turned down by 8 banks. And I finally ended up getting, it was $1.9 million property. When I went in to sign for that, I was shaking. I should never have gotten that property. But I got it, and it taught me something very valuable.
Yeah.
If you keep on and on and on, you can do most things.
Just because one door says shuts and says no doesn't mean it has to be a no. If it's a good, like we talked about a little bit off air, I mean, if it's a good deal and it makes sense on paper, then it's a good deal. It makes sense that you can find a way to do it one way or another. So there's somebody else will see that, recognize that it's a good deal as well at some point. So how'd you start scaling then, and kind of and go from, maybe when you talk about your first property, I guess, back up real quick on that one, when you first made that jump?
Yeah. The first property was really easy. We had our house paid for, and I just obviously took equity out of my house and put 20% down. I was just getting started.
Similar to what I did. Yeah.
Growing up in Jackson County, Kentucky, it's like you put 20% down. It's an 80-20 split. The bank's going 80%. I'm putting 20% down. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Not a lot of creativity. The second one, it was a single family home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We put, it was $122,000. We put 20% down. I think we had a debt service of $96,000 to the bank. And after we got it fixed up, I did a second on that. They did a drive-by. Again, this is before 2008 and the housing crash. They did a drive-by and gave me the money, and I bought a 20 unit and put $50,000 down on a 20 unit, and a guy did a land contract. So I got a little creative on that one.
Okay.
So what's interesting is, after I bought that 20 unit, now I have 2 debts against that house, but I'm getting enough income to kind of make the payment on both of them. And now this 20 unit, I have $50,000 down. It's an $800,000 property. I put $50,000 down, but it's a land contract, so it really wasn't in my name.
Gotcha.
So
for those who don't know, explain the land contract real quick.
Okay, a land contract, the owner, he goes into an agreement with me, and it was a 5-year agreement, but I told him I could buy it outright any time within that 5 years.
Yeah.
So I put a smaller amount. If I had bought it for $800,000, it'd be $640,000. The bank would have loaned, so I'd have had to come up with $160,000 out of my pocket.
Yeah.
Well, this way, I only had to take $50,000 against that house, put that $50,000 down as a down payment. Mm-hmm. Well, I get the property, I get to operate it, and any cash flow is mine. I don't get any of the phantom. He still gets the appreciation, the depreciation.
He's acting as the bank in that sense, in the seller finance scenario.
Now, I only did that for 2 years. Again, I could pay him off anytime within that 5 years.
Yeah.
And then it's my property. But the $50,000 goes as part of the down payment.
Right.
So we did the land contract, and I got that money from that house. After I had that 20 unit for about 2 or 3 years, and because I had raised rents, the value of the property went up. I borrowed against the 20 unit and bought 16 more units. Mm-hmm. Then after about 2 years, I fixed those 16 units up, added value to those, sold those to my daughter and son-in-law,
Okay.
and did a 1031 and bought 39 units in Berea.
Okay.
So I now have 59 units with the 50,000 I had borrowed from the house, and I only put $22,000 in the house out of my pocket. So in essence, I still had the house and 59 units from about $22,000.
Yeah.
Then we eventually sold the house.
Okay.
I made $13,000 above the two debt services that I have. So in essence, you take the 13 away from the 22, I now have $9,000 out of pocket and 59 units. So creative financing is awesome.
Yes.
It is a lot of fun.
And it's just thinking outside the box. I mean, because it's easy to start down the path, like I said, the bigger pockets, listening to some of these traditional ways, but then especially as we talked about and discussed, creative financing, especially in these harder markets like this, can honestly be the easier way to get some of these deals done right now, especially with the rates where they are at. And obviously no one knows really what's going to happen. I mean, we all have our guesses in some respects with what could happen. It is an election year coming up, so who knows what happens with that. As we all know, those years tend to be wild. But that's what and I don't know if I've really explained it on the show, but we were able to do seller financing on our 12-unit apartment that in Frankfurt, and we had a partner that didn't want equity, but just wanted to partner on some of the down payment side of things because since we had acquired so much early on, we still didn't have a lot of equity gained yet on our other properties. But ideally, he gave us a really good rate that's way better than what the banks are giving right now at 5.5% interest only payments. Somehow we got him to say interest only payments 5.5%, and so the rents were definitely below market value. We're going to update each of those units slowly as they come available and increase the value of that property based upon the rents over the next 3 years, and then ideally have it had gained enough equity where we can pay him off, get a loan, and be in it for basically $0 out the door, except for the cost of updating individual units, of course, and type of thing. And so, the creative financing part, there's just a million ways to structure a deal, right? And so that's the part I love about it. And it's like, all right, how can we figure this out? So we're like, it's like it's the whole A plus B equals C. Okay, here's C. What are A and what are B? How can we get there? Kind of a thing.
Yes. It's amazing. You're right. We talked a while ago, they don't teach this stuff in school. They don't teach it in society. And a lot of people that build wealth, they're kind of like, I figured it out. I'm not teaching you. You go out and figure it out yourself.
Yes.
So most people that build wealth, they're not going to teach somebody else.
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you're doing because it teaches the average person.
And you're doing that. I failed to bring that up at the beginning, but you've obviously kind of done that as well with the YouTube channel. And if you want to plug that here, go ahead. Like, what is the YouTube channel there you got?
It's called Life in Richmond with Hank Ballinger.
Enrichment.
Okay. What we're trying to do is enrich people's lives, teach them the very things that we do. Creative financing. They got to be aggressive. They got to go out there and build wealth, but learn what you're doing. Don't jump into it without knowledge.
Right.
You want to make sure you're making the right moves. You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I've made mistakes. I've made some with a lot of zeros on the end. Those hurt. And when you make those, you learn quick.
Yeah.
But it's better for future growth.
For sure. And I'm appreciative of having a business partner in that sense too, because I can't always take you. And we've talked about that a little bit here, but sometimes you were able to kind of do it or yourself, but sometimes I'm like, I've got a lot of connections. I've got a lot of relationships with banks and a lot of property investors and so forth. I was like, I just need somebody that can help more on the once that it's acquired, all the hard work that kind of happens after the fact on that. And so I've been very blessed to have that with my business partner. He's been on here, obviously Andrew, a couple of times and so forth. So it's been a great learning experience over the last, it's not even been 2 years, I guess, really at the end of the day here. So, it's kind of wild. And speaking to kind of your experience, how it kind of can quickly snowball once you kind of get through those first couple and, and so forth. So what, roughly just highlight, what does the portfolio look like today? And not necessarily details, but mostly still habitational apartments and things of that nature.
Almost everything is apartments.
Yeah.
We have several houses, probably 20 or 30 houses, but the mass majority, we got up to 712 units. We recently have sold because we were trying to restructure for the first 19 years.
Yeah.
I was a very aggressive, take from this. As soon as I get leverage into it, I'm going to buy another one. As soon as I get leverage in those two, I'm going to buy two more. As soon as I get leverage into four, I'm buying four more. I did that for 19 years, and interesting. I don't encourage this, okay? But I have literally done this. Most people would say, well, let's sell a property to pay our property tax in October. Okay. Because if you pay a property tax early, you get the 2% cut.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I said, no, I'm going to buy a property. I'm going to start early spring or late spring and buy it about October. That way you get that first month free because you don't have a debt service with the bank for 45 days.
Gotcha.
So I would literally buy it at the 1st of October to get that first month free and the deposits and pay my taxes with that first month free.
Wow.
Now that's risky.
Yeah.
I don't encourage it.
A lot of things have to line up in that sense, for sure.
But it worked. I did that a few times. And that's the money I had to pay my taxes, my property taxes. And it worked. But again, it's risky. I'm not there now. I have a lot of money in the bank. I have a lot of equity in property. You get there. Yeah. It happens. One of the things I encourage people to do, Landry, is if you bought a single family home, and let's say you put it on a 25-year amortization, in 25 years, if that's a $100,000 house, in 25 years, it may be worth 200, 250. But if you could buy 30 or 100 or 200 units, whether they're homes or apartments, in 25 or 30 years, now what's your value?
Yeah.
So obviously, I encourage people, be aggressive, get as much as you can young, because in 20, 25 years, you're going to look back and think that was well worth it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's been an amazing ride so far. And I'm excited to see what that looks like here in, 20, 25 years, like you're saying, in that sense. People ask me all the time, a lot of like, what's your plan with it? And I'm like, I don't know, really. I mean, it was just the original plan was to get into it. And then from there, we're just kind of, when deals make sense, they make sense and they come across and you're like, we'll see if we can make this work and continue to add. Do I have an exact number? No, not at all. Do I maybe eventually think about getting into commercial? I don't think you're necessarily in more commercial flex, definitely has crossed my mind a little bit, maybe in some respects, just kind of hedge bets and markets in different respects. But at this point, as you and I both know, I mean, rents aren't coming down and they're probably only going to be going up, from
Absolutely.
the NOI on most of these things are coming due in a big way with either the rates, with a lot of these balloons that need to be refinanced here in the next year or so versus taxes have definitely gone up. Then obviously the insurance is taking a huge hit right now too. So your NOI is definitely getting hit, which at the same time is going to lead to rents going to be climbing again, I think.
Right.
But two, I only see that as probably, I see the opportunity to find more deals where people need to kind of get out from underneath something that they might be upside down on as well.
Yeah. Another interesting thing about that, as you're going through that and you're planning all that, let's say somebody gets started and they're worried about taxes, they're worried about insurance, which you have to. And as long as you're in it, you have to worry about those.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, like you said a while ago, just get started. Because after you get several units and you get more and you get more, now other people are starting to know you, bankers, people that own real estate. And what do people that own real estate? They love people that want to buy real estate. Because if I ever want to sell, interesting fact here, there is 8 billion people on this planet. But if I get ready to sell a piece of property, the only one I want to talk to out of 8 billion people is the one who wants to buy it. So look how valuable you become if you want to buy some property and somebody has it for sale. You're the only person on the planet they want to talk to.
Yeah.
That makes you very valuable.
Sure.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah. Any other things that you've learned along the way as far as just, maybe dealing with if it's with the tenants or structuring things as far as from the management side or anything to point like that? Obviously we talked about acquisition and rolling it and snowballing into multiple properties, but any crazy stories? I know everyone's always got kind of a wild story from a tenant scenario or something like that.
There's always crazy stories, and you get more and more as time goes on. In 20 years, we've gotten a lot of stories. you're always going to have the crazy stories. We've had people that have turned their stove on and a friend called them and they left, and then their smoke detector goes off. They had a pizza in the oven, and then it starts smoking, and the neighbors then call the fire department, and we go over there for a burnt pizza. We had one lady smoked up her unit because she did something very similar, turned on a stove, and she had a lot of stuff, I guess, let's say.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff fell off the counter onto the stove, and she had left. So this stove is on, and now this stuff starts burning, and it starts smoking up the units, and she's got a lot of cats in there and a lot of stuff. I mean, and so this stuff gets all smoked up and stuff. So you have crazy things. You get fights between tenants.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy stuff.
Have you always found, I think, having a good relationship with the tenants goes such a long way. And that seems to be something we've seen early on in our career with this side as well.
Firm but fair.
Yeah.
Be firm. You have to have laws across, rules across, and everybody has to abide by them, no matter if it's somebody you really get along with or somebody you maybe don't get along with as well. But they all have to abide by the rules. You got to keep the rules the same, firm but fair.
Yeah. Things will happen. We just had someone pass away. I won't go into details, but someone pass away after 1 month. They just moved in, kind of a scenario, and you're like, things happen. And we try to give the family some time, kind of scenario. But there's always something. You think it's going to be a sunny, great afternoon or day, but you could get a call, and that's par for the course. I mean, it's part of it that comes with it. There's obviously it's not always sexy as far as what it looks like maybe on the outside to a lot of people, and at the same time, I mean, obviously, this is your career now, but people think it's passive income kind of scenario. And in some ways, there's some truth to it, but really, as you know, it's not really that passive. It's still a job. And there are still things that go wrong. There are still things that are always going to have our attention within these things. And it's just, but, I'm sure for you, like me, I wanted to plot my own course in a lot of ways and be captain of my own ship as far as my destiny in that sense. And that's why I'm trying to think of, I think owning the business I currently have was probably a bigger jump for me than getting into real estate. So, but in all honesty, just I think, and I definitely would want to start exploring this a little bit more as far as just the business side as a whole. But when because the interesting thing about real estate is you build it up enough, you can kind of just pivot into like, okay, this is you got another, income. You're just pivoting over from one to the other. It's not, I mean, there's a jump for sure.
Right.
But then in some cases when you're like me and crazy and you're like, I'm going to open an independent insurance agency from scratch. So you open your doors day one and you still got to eat somehow type of scenario and working a second job and type of thing and doing other things to make ends meet and making sure you get there, seeing the future as far as multiple steps down the road, and realizing, I'm going to play the long game here, which is what real estate investing usually is in a lot of ways too. But that was, especially when I had 2 kids at the time and a wife and married and mortgage as well and stuff like that. It was a pretty terrifying, I'm not gonna lie, moment and so forth. I think it was definitely scarier than, it was still scary buying your first rental property, not having done it. So I think fear keeps a lot of people from maybe trying to do it, that they can't do it or that they're going to end up upside down. But if it's one thing I think I've learned from this podcast, especially in Kentucky, how people in Kentucky are some of the nicest people, I would argue, in the state of the union, and that they're so willing to kind of offer their 2 cents as far as advice or give you kind of examples or what not to do, what to do, or, hey, I'm struggling in this area. Hey, here's something. Have you thought about this way? They're so willing to do that kind of scenario. So I appreciate the last 2 years of people like you, Hank, coming on the podcast and kind of just giving back to, and I'm sure there were people in your life that kind of did, I mean, you listened to a lot of books, so I'm sure there was people here in Kentucky that also kind of lended a hand in that sense to you as well.
You mentioned fear keeps a lot of people out. Robert Kiyosaki, the guy that wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a lot of other books, about 24, I think now he is. He says fear is an acronym. It stands for false evidence appearing real. And that's really the way you need to think about it. It is scary thinking you start your own business or you get into real estate. You make the jump. You get into your own private business. It's an insurance, and now you got to go out and get clients. And depending on how many clients and whether or not they pay you is whether or not you and your kids eat. A little scary.
Yeah.
A little scary. But, with apartments, once you have apartments and you get people in them, you get that income coming in. Like you said, it's a little more passive. You're not having to do as much, although there is a lot of work to apartments. But in a business, the difference I look at between the apartment and your insurance business is your insurance business, you go out and you do some work and you have some money coming in. But then you got to go out and get another client to get more money coming in. Then you got to go out and get more. With apartments, let's say you have 10 units, 100 units, whatever. You fill those and that money comes in every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are going to move out. You may have to evict some, but as you do, you're going to get more tenants to come in, and then you're going to get that passive income pretty much the same. It's going to vary a little bit from
it's always something, but yeah, the fear thing is what drives people to not do it, I think, most of the time. And I talk about that with, some of the agents we bring on and so forth like that. It's like, if you're able to just look 5 years down the road and see that and be like, yeah, I want to get to that point, and knowing that you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit on the front end to get there versus, no, I'd rather just have the safe W-2, which is totally fine type of scenario. I just lay it out black and white, and like the people either get it right away or they like, no, I don't think that's for me type of scenario. And sometimes maybe they get pushed and they need a little prodding because they want to do it and they're just afraid to do it. But, like I said, if this podcast can hopefully give back anything and hopefully get somebody out of that fearful thinking in that sense and take that jump, it'll be worth it to me. And I'm sure for you as well.
Yeah. I tell people, one of the things I say on my podcast all the time is, the title is Life Enrichment, but one of the things I keep going over is you can become redneck rich. And me being a redneck from Jackson County, Appalachian area, I'm a redneck. But you can be redneck rich. Now, the way I define redneck rich is you can be redneck, and redneck, you see them driving a four-wheeler, you see them living in a very small, very affordable home in the back of a hill somewhere in a valley or something in the Appalachian area. So their living is down here. Their income may be up here. And that's the way you should be. Mm-hmm. You keep your living down here and you keep your income building up. Now, as it gets so far up, then you can start advancing your lifestyle. Sure. But you keep that income coming way in excess of where you're living. Yeah. Your income is way up here, your expenses are down here. And if you keep that up, as you keep building this, you can keep building this up. Well, eventually you're going to be living on more, even though it's a very small percentage of your income. Yeah. But you're still living larger than the average person.
Yeah. And as you and I think would agree, at a certain point, once your physical needs are met and you're able to kind of buy back some of your time and do something like that, once you get to that point, really, though, as in a reasonable way, really, however much you add on top of that is not going to add an additional happiness type of scenario, and in that sense. But getting to that first hump and just realizing that your needs are met, and now you can start investing in other people or more things, or time or monetary value of things. That's what I'm excited to get to. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, and do it more than I'm able to do now, and stuff like that. I've got 3 young kids. That keeps a lot of my time pretty busy right now, and that's just a blessing in ministry in itself to kind of hopefully raise them and teach them for sure. I didn't ask, do you have kids? You and your wife have kids?
I had one daughter.
Okay.
She is now 33.
Oh yeah, you sold. Yeah.
She's 33. I'm blessed with 3 grandkids.
There you go.
9, 8. I had one that just had a birthday yesterday, so he's 8. And then the daughter, she is 5. She would like to be the queen, princess type. So, as a matter of fact, she calls the 2 older boys, she calls them her boys.
Okay.
So, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Busy. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Well, hey, I appreciate your time, Hank, and coming on the show, your drive over to do this. And I'm glad we were able to kind of get together, make this happen, get to know you better, and hopefully we kind of continue this relationship.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate you asking me to come over.
And if anybody wants to kind of reach out to you or get a hold of you to kind of get some advice or just shoot the breeze, what's the best way to do that? Podcast, YouTube, whatever you want to give here.
Yeah, watch the podcast on YouTube. It's Hank Ballinger or Hank Ballinger with Life Enrichment. And again, I go over Redneck Rich all the time, but you can on that. There's some information on the description below that you can go to the webpage. look us up on the webpage, and then that way you can have more access to more stuff, some studies and stuff like that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Appreciate it. And to the point, I mean, obviously you're older than I, but I don't think there's a lot of individuals maybe in your age bracket jumping into something. I mean, it probably was just as scary going into YouTube and video stuff as it may have been back when to jump into real estate.
Yeah, it was more so.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a camera trying to talk to an inanimate object and trying to tell people what they need to do and about creative financing. And it's weird.
Yeah.
It's odd, but it's been very good. One of the things, I actually used to teach in-person classes for probably 10 years.
Really?
And had several people. And one, a lot of times at the end of the course, it would be like a 6-week course. Each week is 2 hours. And at the end of the course, I'll ask them, how much real estate do you want to own? How much do you want to get the first year? And just talk to them about that. I've had several that say, well, the first year, maybe one house. And then the second year, maybe, two more, maybe. One guy told me that in the first year, he bought 4 houses. And in the next year or two, he ended up with 12 houses. The only money he had out of pocket is the first house, only the closing cost, because he bought it cheap and did a lot of forced depreciation. And so the bank loaned him 100% and the money to construct, for the reconstruction. And he had $1,500 out of pocket.
Wow.
Ended up with 12 houses, sold those, did a 1031, bought 20 units from us. Then this last year, he leveraged off of the 20 and bought 30 from us. He now has 50 units, $1,500 out of pocket. That's creative financing. That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's what we like to see. Again, appreciate your time. I'll let you go, and hopefully we will see everybody for another episode. Next episode will probably be season 3 or post kind of the holiday season, and we'll kind of get back into it. But we'll see everybody in the next episode.
Thank you very much, Landry.
Thanks, Hank.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email Landry at novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.